Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're embarking on a journey, really, into a text that has shaped thought for millennia, the Tao Te Ching.
A cornerstone, absolutely.
Our focus for this deep dive is its foundational first chapter. It's, barely 81 characters in the original.
That's right, incredibly concise. Yet it contains a universe of meaning, or at least that's what centuries of brilliant minds seem to think. They've really wrestled with its paradoxes.
And we've got quite the range of those minds to draw on today. We've pulled from a stack of sources, giving us this rich tapestry of perspectives. We have ancient commentators like He Gong and Wang Bi, who really laid the groundwork.
The early foundational interpreters.
Then later thinkers like Su Che and contemporary scholars, people like Chen Ging, Lu Shagan Zhangjing, offering really modern insights.
Bringing fresh eyes and sometimes new textual evidence, too.
Exactly. And we've also folded in some literary angles from Yukiyu and even religious interpretations like those from Han Shendeking.
So a real spectrum of views across history and disciplines.
That's the plan. Our mission today is to try and, cut through some of the complexity, unpack the core wisdom of this opening chapter.
If we can.
Right. And see what light it sheds on reality, on knowledge, and ultimately, how we might live more fully in the world today. Does it still speak to us?
I think that's the crucial question.
So let's start with something incredibly human, really relatable. Have you ever tried to describe a truly profound experience?
Oh, definitely.
Maybe it was, standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon or watching a huge thunderstorm roll in over the mountains.
Or maybe something quieter, like holding a newborn.
Yes, or just feeling that overwhelming sense of connection with someone you love. You grasp for words, you say amazing, powerful, beautiful, but they always feel, thin, don't they?
Insufficient is the word that comes to mind, yeah. They gesture towards the experience, but they don't capture the essence.
Right. The real core of it remains just beyond language's reach.
And that very moment, that gap, that space where words fail when faced with a truth that's maybe too vast or just too subtle to capture, that's precisely where Laozi begins chapter 1.
He doesn't ease you in.
No, he immediately confronts us with his fundamental limit of language, especially when we try to talk about the deepest reality, the ultimate way.
Okay, so to really get a feel for it, I think it helps to hear the original sounds, the cadence that carried these ideas through time. I'll read the 81 characters in Mandarin. Let's just let the rhythm sink in for a moment.
Good idea.
Read slowly and clearly. Blau Yi's highs.
是我讲wuwei. He was elegant. Clear kandia. Even just hearing it, there's a certain resonance there, a balance.
There is. Now, let's lay down a literal translation. And we should stress, this is like the raw material, right?
Exactly. The bedrock, the profound insights, the debates, they all come from how different minds have interpreted and built upon these foundational lines over centuries.
Okay, so the first two lines. Come.
Literally, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao.
Okay.
The name that can be named is not the eternal name.
So right off the bat, the ultimate reality, this Wei or Tao and its true essence, the name, they're beyond our usual ability to define or pin down permanently with words.
That's the core message. Any attempt to fully capture it in language falls short of the eternal, the constant aspect.
Got it. Next. The Pagapai set on about Wu or after Ming.
Although, wait, should that comma be after Wu or after Ming?
You've hit on the first major interpretive fork already. We'll definitely dig into that punctuation puzzle. For now, let's stick to a common literal rendering based on the structure presented in the outline.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go with that for now.
So translating that structure, the nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth.
The named is the mother of all things.
Right, introducing these two fundamental concepts, Wu and Yu, or maybe nameless and named, and linking them to the origin and the generation of the universe.
Precisely. One seems tied to the very start, the other to the bringing forth of everything we see.
Then we have Wu Sayu, Sayut.
And here's the second big interpretive challenge, even in just trying for a literal translation, focusing on that tricky word, you.
Okay.
One common reading, focusing on you as desire or intention, gives us, therefore, always without desire, observe its mystery. Always with desire, observe its manifestations.
Okay, so desire is the key there, but what's the other way?
Another reading, perhaps connecting sa, changwu, and changyu, more directly to the previous lines about wu and yu, might suggest something like, therefore, from the perspective of the constant namelessness, wu, intend to observe its mystery.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of the constant named yu, intend to observe its manifestations.
So it's about the perspective you take, rather than just desire itself.
Exactly. The text's ambiguity here is actually quite profound. It opens doors rather than closing them. We'll unpack that tension.
Fascinating. And the concluding lines. Literally,
these two.
referring back to, well, whatever the two are, which seems to depend on the previous lines.
Precisely. These two emerge from the same source, but have different names.
Okay, so despite their differences, they share an origin.
Yes. And they are both called the profound mystery.
Sion. That word again.
Sion. Then, profound mystery of profound mysteries.
Deeper and deeper.
And finally, the gateway to all wonders.
Wow. Okay, so it brings these two seemingly different things together, calls their unity mystery, and then says that mystery layered upon itself is the doorway to everything subtle and wondrous.
That's a good summary of the literal structure. It points towards this mysterious unity as the access point.
All right, with the raw text laid out, we can really start digging into these fascinating layers of meaning that scholars and, well, sages have uncovered over the millennia.
This is where the deep dive truly begins, yeah. Moving beyond just the dictionary definitions to get at the philosophical heart of the chapter.
Let's go back to those opening lines then. Arjun. Arjun. Oh, okay. It's not just a clever word puzzle, is it?
Not at all. It's a foundational statement about the nature of reality itself, and crucially, our relationship to that reality through language.
It feels almost counterintuitive. The first thing Laozi tells you about the Tao is that you can't really tell anyone about the true Tao.
Exactly. It pulls the rug out from under our usual way of thinking. The core insight here, and this is something most commentators agree on, is that the ultimate Tao, the eternal, ever-flowing, fundamental way of the universe, it exists on a level that simply transcends our human language, our concepts.
Our language needs definitions, right? Boundaries, fixed labels. We point and say, this is that.
Precisely. But the Tao is boundless. It's constantly changing. It's dynamic. Our words try to freeze it, to make it static.
Like you said earlier, it's like taking a photo of a river. You capture a snapshot, a form, the name river, but you completely miss the ceaseless flow, the life, the ungraspable essence.
That's a perfect analogy. Language makes the infinite finite, the dynamic static. Jing brings up that classic Chinese concept. Words cannot fully express meaning. It's a known limitation.
He uses examples, right? Like drinking water.
Yes, like drinking water, you can describe cold endlessly, but only the person drinking knows the actual feeling, the sensation itself. You can't bottle the sensation in words.
Or that story from Zhuangzi about the wheelwright, Lin Bian.
Yes. He couldn't teach his son his most profound skill, his knack, through words alone. It was something learned through years of kind of embodied practice, something felt in the hands, in the timing. The deepest knowledge was beyond linguistic transmission.
So it's not just about grand cosmic truth, but also about subtle skills and direct experiences.
Absolutely. And you see similar illustrations in Zen Buddhism, which was heavily influenced by Taoism. Think of the Buddha holding up a flower and only Mahakasyapa understanding shown just by a smile.
No explanation needed.
None. The truth was transmitted directly, non-verbally, or masters refusing to answer the highest truth directly, sometimes just using a gesture, like the Choda holding up a single finger.
It seems like they're pointing out that the rational naming part of our mind isn't the only way, or maybe not even the primary way, to access deeper understanding.
That's a great way to put it. So any way we can name or describe the Tao, any Kedaozi Dao or Keming is already a kind of reduction. It's a pointer, maybe, but it's not the thing itself.
Wanbi, the early commentator, he really focused on this, didn't he?
He did. Wangi saw these nameable Daos and nameable names as products of what he called is, which means something like pointing to specific things and creating fixed forms or concepts.
Like naming objects.
Exactly. The true Tao, for Wanbi, isn't a specific thing with a fixed form you can point to and slap a label on. It's prior to that, or encompasses all of that.
And Suche, another thinker, he used examples like moral concepts.
Yes. Suche brought in Confucian virtues like benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, These are things we can talk about, define, discuss. They are important, maybe even expressions of the Tao in certain contexts.
Oh, but they're limited.
Limited, yes. They apply in specific situations, they change, they aren't universally or eternally applicable in the same absolute way the ultimate Tao is. They are Ko-di, not the eternal constant Tao itself.
Then you have someone like Han Shen-de, and coming from a Buddhist angle, how did he see it?
Han Shan framed the Cheng Tao, the eternal way, as the true eternal way, and its fundamental nature, formless and nameless.
Utterly beyond description.
Fundamentally so. From his perspective, any name we use, even the word Tao itself, is just a temporary label, a borrowed name, a convenience for communication. It's not the reality.
That really emphasizes the transcendence. What about Yu, the literary scholar?
Yu brings a slightly different flavor. He interprets this opening almost as an invitation, an encouragement to embrace what he calls a great unknowable.
Interesting phrase.
Isn't it? He suggests that true wisdom, whether it's in science or art or philosophy, actually begins with a kind of fundamental humility. An acknowledgement that there are realities our current concepts and language just can't fully grasp.
So it's not about giving up, but about having respect for the unknown.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from trying to conquer and define everything to respectfully engaging with the mystery. It pushes back against a purely human-centered view where we think our concepts define reality.
And Ying, the modern scholar, he noted something about how Laozi uses the word name itself.
Yes, Ying points out that here isn't just the everyday use of name. He quotes another scholar, Zhang Danian, saying, "True knowledge, you saw, is youwei. It transcends names and language."
So how does Laozi do that? How does he point beyond language using language?
Ching suggests Laozi uses a technique called tu, basically, showing by negation or contrast. By stating what the Tao is not, it's not the Tao that can be spoken, not the name that can be named. He cleverly points us towards what it is, but without trapping it in a definition.
Like defining light by describing darkness.
Precisely. It's a sophisticated move, using words to reveal the limitations of words.
But Liu Xiaogan, looking at those early manuscripts, the Boshu texts, he found something that adds a wrinkle, right? The particle wu.
Yes, that's a key textual point. Liu Xiaogan observed that in the Boshu versions, the lines often appear as Dao Kedaoye, Fei Hang Daoye. That little all particle, he argues, subtly softens the absolute negation.
How so?
It suggests something more like the Tao that could be spoken of, well, it's not the eternal Tao. It acknowledges that there is a speakable aspect, an aspect we can grasp and discuss, but it's just not the whole unchanging picture. It hints at a more dialectical relationship, maybe.
So not a complete dismissal of the nameable, but a qualification.
Perhaps. It suggests recognizing that any name or concept is only a partial truth, a facet, not the eternal essence. But this complexity immediately brings up the critique, Wang Fuzi leveled centuries later.
Which was?
If the Tao is truly beyond words, why write the Tao Te Ching? Why these 5,000 characters trying to describe it?
That's a fair question.
Wang Fuzi suggested Laozi is navigating this inherent paradox. By calling the Tao ineffable, he preserves its natural, spontaneous quality, what Zhuangzi called Ting, heavenly harmony, preventing it from becoming a rigid dogma.
Okay.
But by also calling it the Tao, Cheng Tao, the constant, eternal way he allows it to be, to circulate, to be applied, to be understood, at least partially, in the human world. It's a strategic balancing act.
Wow. So this very first statement isn't just about some abstract cosmic principle. It's deeply about our human condition, our reliance on language, our need to categorize, and the fundamental tension between that need and a reality that's fluid, dynamic, and ultimately resists being perfectly pinned down.
Absolutely. And it forces us to ask, as you hinted earlier, how often do we limit ourselves or limit others by the labels we apply? I'm just an introvert. He's unreliable. She's definitely type A.
Are those labels capturing the full, flowing potential? Or are they like that static photo of the river, trapping us in a fixed, named reality and making us miss the deeper currents, the true essence?
That recognition of limitation, of the gap between name and reality, sets the stage perfectly for the next lines, which describe how the universe itself arises.
Phew, it's happened. The nameless as the beginning, the named as the mother. Or perhaps Wu and you.
Right. On the surface, it sounds like a straightforward creation story, a move from an unmanifest state to a manifest one.
But you mentioned the punctuation debate.
Yes, this passage has sparked centuries of discussion, centered largely on where the pause or break should fall. The most traditional reading, the one found in many early texts like the Shiji and supported by key commentators like Gong and Wong Bi, reads it as ku bi dosen.
Okay, so Wu Ming, nameless, and Yu Ming, named, are the key terms there. The nameless is the beginning. The named is the mother.
In that view, nameless and named are understood as maybe states or attributes of the underlying source, the Tao itself.
How did Wang Bi explain that?
Wan Bi's whole philosophy really hinges on this. He famously said, check, basically, all existence, all having originates from Wu, non-being or the nameless. So for him, Wu Ming is the state, Wu unformed, the primordial state, the absolute beginning.
Before anything had shape or definition.
Exactly. And Yu Ming is the state, the formed manifest state. This named state then acts as the Di, the mother, that, in his words, grows things, nurtures them, stabilizes them, perfects them. It's the generative force of the manifest world.
That makes sense. What about Su Che?
Su Che framed it using the concepts of Wu, often translated as body essence and function application. He said the nameless is the essential body or substance of the Tao, its quiet, unmanifest core, and the named is the function or active expression of the Tao, its role in bringing the manifest world into being and sustaining it.
So substance and function of the same Tao. He Shanggong?
He Shanggong, another very early voice, was quite direct. He simply stated, nameless refers to the Tao itself, the formless origin. Juk named refers to heaven and earth, which have form and act as the mother, the source of everything else.
Interesting. Zhang had a unique take here too, didn't he? Something about space.
Yes, quite unique.
Yeah.
Within this nameless named reading, Zhang interpreted it very specifically as e-space and susha, the fundamental material elements that constitute all things.
Why did he go that route?
He felt it avoided a kind of philosophical repetition and offered a more concrete, almost scientific picture of the origin's vast space and then the emergence of basic matter.
Okay, so that's the traditional Wu Ming Yu Ming reading. What's the alternative?
The alternative punctuation, which gained traction later, maybe starting around the Song dynasty, and is championed today by scholars like Chen Gang, reads it as...
So here, Wu and Yu themselves are the subjects. Wu names the beginning, or non-being names the beginning.
And Yu names the mother, or being names the mother, yes. Chen Gang argues strongly that Wu and Yu are Laozi's truly groundbreaking philosophical categories.
But what do they mean in this reading? Wu isn't just nothingness.
No, definitely not empty nothingness for Chen. He sees as potentiality, the hidden, implicit, latent power or state of the Tao before anything becomes actual.
Like the potential energy in a seed.
That's a good analogy. And Yu is then the process of that potential becoming actualized, unfolding into form. It's the state between pure formlessness and concrete form. For Chen, this reading highlights the Tao in a dynamic process of manifestation, moving from potential to actuality.
But Liu Xiaogan pushes back on this reading based on the texts.
He does. Liu Xiaogan points to strong textual evidence, including that hu particle in the Boshu texts, and how the phrase is quoted in early historical records like the Shiji, which he believes overwhelmingly supports the traditional Hashu reading. He tends to interpret it more through a cognitive lens.
Cognitive, how so?
He might see Tu as representing the unknowable, ineffable aspect of the origin, the part beyond our conceptual grasp, and is representing the knowable, nameable aspect of that same origin, the part we can perceive and categorize.
Okay, so whether we read it as nameless named as states or Wu Yu as philosophical categories or even unknowable knowable aspects, the next line seems crucial for everyone.
Absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
These two, whatever we decide they are, emerge from the same source but have different names.
So despite the interpretive differences about what the two are nameless named, Wu Yu, potentiality, actuality, body function, unknowable, the core point is their shared origin. They aren't fundamentally separate.
Exactly. They aren't true opposites fighting each other, but two facets or maybe two phases of the same underlying reality, the Tao. It's a dynamic dance.
Han Shanda King had a phrase for this unity.
Yes. Body, essence, Wu, and function manifestation, Yu, are not two. He described how the Chur's ultimate emptiness, the body of Tao, Mus Dik, fully becomes the E-formed and named world. It's a complete transformation or manifestation, not a separation.
And he, Shanggong, described the origin dynamically, too.
He did, not as static states, but as the Tao actively expelling vital energy, spreading transformation, and emerging from this state of emptiness or wu. It's generative.
But again, Wang Fuzi throws a philosophical wrench in the works.
He does. Wang Fuzi looked at that Tongchu same origin idea and argued, well, if Uz and Nia truly emerged from the same source, then neither one can be the absolute beginning of the other.
So you can't simply say Wu came first, then you.
Exactly. He said, Taoyo to Ching, neither one is the absolute start of the other. This challenges a simple, linear creation model, Wu gives birth to you, and suggests something more simultaneous, more integrated, maybe co-arising.
That adds yet another layer of complexity.
It does. And you also see some thinkers like Han Fei connecting this duality to other concepts. He saw the Tao as a Ching, a combination of matter and spirit having dual attributes.
Which sounds a bit like yin and yang from the Yi Jing.
Very similar, yes. It shows how these ideas were constantly interacting and influencing each other as people tried to wrap their heads around Laozi's profound statements.
So this exploration of Wu and You, or nameless and named, it's a deep dive into the relationship between unmanifest potential and manifest reality. Not as opposites, but as this inseparable dance emerging from a son of source.
And for us, thinking about our own lives, how does that concept of Wu, infinite potential, the state before definition, resonate? Does it feel like a source we can tap into?
And how does the You, the world of form, the things we see and name, our circumstances, our actions, how does that arise? Can we start to perceive that connection, that interplay between the unmanifest potential and the manifest reality in our own experiences, our projects, even our relationships?
And if we accept this dynamic reality, this interplay of Wu and You, the next logical question is, how do we perceive it? How do we interact with it? And that's exactly what the following lines seem to address.
Right.
Therefore, something about observing its mystery, Qiniao, and its manifestations, Qigao. And again, that pivotal word, You, and the structure around Kangsh, Qingqiao, create that interpretive fork in the road.
Okay, let's unpack that. The first major reading focuses on You as desire or intention.
Yes, the traditional reading, which Liu Xiaogan argues is strongly supported by the Boshu manuscripts, with the particle appearing after Oshu. This reading is,
So, always without desire, Wu, observe its mystery. Always with desire, You, observe its manifestations.
exactly. This interpretation puts the focus squarely on the state of mind, or the intention of the person observing. Is your mind clouded by desire, or is it clear?
And how does that state of mind affect what you see?
Well, He Shanggong gave it a distinctly moral flavor. He linked, without desire, to perceiving the Tao's Ma, its essential subtlety, and even suggested it leads to long life.
While desire.
With desire. For He Shanggong focuses your attention on Du Yu, where worldly affairs, ambitions, and attachments tend to lead. And following those desires, he warned, could lead to your downfall. So desire blinds you to deeper truths by fixing your attention on worldly gains and losses.
Okay, that's a clear moral interpretation. What about Wang Bi?
Wang Di took a more philosophical, perhaps observational tack. He said you need a an empty mind, free from desire to perceive the Miao, the mystery. He defined Miao here as the extreme subtlety, the hidden originating state of things.
And you having desire.
Having You, which could mean having specific intentions or focusing on outcomes, is how you observe the Jiao. Wang Bi described Jiao as the returning end, the final manifestation, the boundary or outcome of things. Interestingly, he connected this back to his idea that manifestation always relies on potential for its proper function.
Han Chen Jibing offered a very practical take on this reading too, didn't he? Relating it to daily life.
Yes, very practical. Han Chen read not just as always, but as You, meaning in ordinary everyday life. And he interpreted You not as grasping desire necessarily, but as Yao, meaning to want to intend to aim to.
So the lines become a kind of instruction for practice?
Exactly. They become
Beautiful.
Settle your mind in the state of Wu, or without desire, intending to observe the subtle mystery. And Settle your mind in the state of you, or with intention focused on the manifest, intending to observe the concrete manifestations.
So it's not about eliminating all intention, but about consciously choosing where to place your attention on the subtle essence or the manifest form as a practice within your daily routine.
Precisely. This connects beautifully to his other core idea that the Tao's entire essence is present in every single thing. You don't need to go to a mountaintop. You can observe the miao and jiao in your teacup, in your breath, in your interactions. It echoes Wangzi's more shocking examples of finding Tao in weeds or even excrement. The profound is right here in the ordinary, if you look with the right kind of attention.
Zhang also following this without desire with desire reading. How did he put it?
The Zhengjing So Fuxin is the state that allows you to perceive the subtle principles, the underlying structures or energies, whereas being driven by desire restricts your view to only the surface phenomena, the outward appearance.
Okay, so that's one whole stream of interpretation of focusing on the observer's state of mind regarding desire or intention. What's the alternative reading?
The alternative, favored by scholars like Chen Guiying and also Su Che, takes issue with the idea that Laozi would advocate having desire to see anything truly, since Taoism generally views grasping desire as an obstacle to insight.
So they punctuate it differently.
They prefer the punctuation. Revelo, reading it as always wu, intend to observe its mystery. Always you intend to observe its manifestations. Or maybe always from the perspective of wu.
Exactly. This shifts the focus from the observer's internal state, desire, to the perspective from which the observation is made. Are you looking from the standpoint of the unmanifest potential to see its subtle essence? Or are you looking from the standpoint of the manifest world to see its forms and functions?
How did Su Che describe this?
Su Che described the sage as embodying this flexible perspective. He wrote, Wu Hu Te, the sage enters the realm of the myriad manifest things, but remains grounded in the state of Wu in order to observe the subtle mystery. So engaging with the world, but keeping that connection to the unmanifest.
Right. And conversely, Rupu Gu, the sage embodies the ultimate Wu, but remains connected to the state of you in order to observe the concrete manifestations. Yeah.
It's about holding both perspectives.
Yes, and Suki stressed the need for balance. If you get stuck only seeing the jiao, the manifestations, your understanding becomes crude, lacking spirit or depth. But if you get stuck only in the miao, the subtle essence, your understanding might be refined, but it's that not comprehensive, not connected to the whole of reality.
Fascinating. So whether the lines mean observing without desire to see the subtle and with desire intention to see the manifest, or observing from the perspective of the unmanifest, wu, to see the subtle, and from the perspective of the manifest, you, to see the forms. Either way, it's pointing to two different but complementary modes of perception needed to grasp reality fully.
That's a great way to synthesize it. And the objects of this perception, let's clarify, piao and jiao.
Right. Miao seems to be mystery, subtlety, essence, the hidden core, the origin state. Wang Bi called it the extreme subtlety.
And yi, that seems to be the boundary, the manifestation, the edge, the concrete form, the final outcome, the practical application, the surface phenomena. Shanggong called it he, the tendency or destination of things. Wang Bi called it the returning end. The Xiaogan also noted the Boshu version sometimes has ihu, suggesting jiao might even function as a verb there to seek or observe the boundary or manifestation.
Think of the miao as the seed's potential, maybe, and the qi as the actual tree with its branches and leaves.
That works. Both are essential aspects of the same living reality.
This feels incredibly relevant for us today. Think about it. What do you notice when you approach a difficult meeting, say, with a very fixed goal and strong desire for a specific outcome, versus when you approach it with a calmer, more open state, simply observing what unfolds?
Does focusing only on the desired outcome, the jiao, blind you to the subtle dynamics, the underlying feelings, the miao of the situation?
Or can you consciously try to shift your perspective? Can you look at a problem from the viewpoint of pure potential? Woo, what could this become before getting bogged down only in its current manifest difficulties? You.
And Han Deking's point about finding Tao in everything, where can you consciously practice observing both the subtle essence, miao, and the concrete form, jiao, in your ordinary routine today, in your work, in nature, in conversation.
It really opens up a different way of paying attention.
And this layered understanding of perception of wu and yu, miao and zhao, leads us directly into those final, powerful, concluding lines of the chapter.
These two emerge from the same source but have different names. They are both called the profound mystery. Profound mystery of profound mysteries, the gateway to all wonders.
Okay, these two. We've seen commentators link this back to different pairs, right? Yes, depending on their interpretation of the preceding lines. It could be the nameless and named, wu and yu, the state of observing without desire and with desire, the perspectives of wu and yu, or even miao and zhao themselves. Han Shan, for instance, thought miao and zhao were the two that emerged from the same Tao.
But the key agreement seems to be
That whatever these two are, they come from a single shared origin. They might appear different, have different labels, yiming, but fundamentally they are unified, and that unity, that source, can be described as Hunan, the mystery. Both are called Swan.
Let's talk about Xuan. It seems to mean deep, profound, dark, obscure, mysterious.
All of those, yes. It's a very rich, evocative term. Wang Bi described it as na, meaning darkness, depth, obscurity, and also as silent nothingness. It points to something beyond our easy intellectual grasp, something hidden.
Hin Shenggong even equated it with K, heaven, the ultimate principle.
Right. And Su Che associated it with things that are remote, vast, without limit or end. It really signifies the ultimate hidden ground of all being.
But then Laozi doesn't just stop at Xuan. He says, Xuan, Xuan. Mystery of mysteries. Why the repetition?
That's the million-dollar question. It's not just saying it's really, really mysterious. It implies something more complex, a layering, a deepening.
It suggests you never reach a final point where you can say, okay, solved it. That's the mystery.
Precisely. Wang Bi argued that the very moment you label something Xuan, you've already limited it with a concept, a name. To truly apprehend the Tao, you must constantly transcend even the concept of Xuan itself. You have to go, always moving deeper, peeling back layers, refusing to get stuck in any single definition, even the definition mystery.
Su Che elaborated on this too, about the mind doing the naming.
Yes, Su Che pointed out that even calling something Xuan implies a mind that is perceiving and naming it. For him, meant going beyond this dualistic observed framework, beyond the naming mind itself, reaching a state where all distinctions dissolve. He called this state Jing, exhausted, finished, complete, meaning you've reached the ultimate point where nothing more can be distinguished or labeled.
Wow. Han Shan de King, coming from his cultivation background, saw this as a call to practice.
Very much so. He interpreted it as urging the practitioner towards sao, which means something like washing away or clearing out even the subtle perception or trace scheme of the swan.
So, not just understanding the mystery, but dissolving the sense that there is a separate mystery to understand.
Exactly. The ultimate aim for Han Shan is to reach a state of, forgetting the self and dissolving the distinction between subject and object, observer and observed. When you reach that state of complete integration, then everywhere you go, everything you encounter is simply this fundamental mystery. It's no longer something out there. It's the very fabric of the reality you inhabit.
That sounds like a state of profound non-duality, where the mystery isn't a problem to be solved, but the living reality itself.
Beautifully put. Zhang Jing offered a slightly different, perhaps more dynamic interpretation of Yi. He saw it as an ongoing iterative process, a.g. exploring the mystery and then exploring the mystery again.
Like a continuous journey of discovery.
Yes, a constant deepening of understanding. Not a single static revelation, but an active, unfolding exploration.
And you connected this embrace of Xuan, of mystery, to creativity.
He did. He linked this directly to the unknown. He argued that this willingness to operate in the space beyond current knowledge, to embrace the mystery, is the fertile ground for all genuine creativity and discovery, in science, in art, in philosophy. It requires humility and an openness to being constantly surprised, to realizing there's always more beyond what we currently grasp.
So this continuous deepening mystery, this AA, is then described as the
Zhongyaozimen, the gateway to all wonders, all subtleties, all the myriad miao we discussed earlier.
And the gateway is the mystery itself.
It seems so. It's not that you solve the mystery and then pass through a gate. The process of engaging with the mystery, of going deeper, yuan, of transcending concepts that processes the pathway, the doorway, to understanding reality in its most profound and wondrous forms.
It's an entrance, not a destination.
Precisely. And Hanshen Dokeng adds a crucial reminder here. Reaching this peak understanding, this ai zhao dao jiji, isn't just an intellectual exercise. It requires skill and mastery perfected through dedicated practice, particularly stillness and meditative disciplines. It goes beyond words.
So chapter 1 doesn't hand us the answer, here's the Tao. Instead, it gives us the way to approach the question. It shows us that the process of seeking, the courage to embrace the mystery and its layers, is itself the key.
Absolutely. And for us living our lives, how can we apply this? When we learn something new, a skill, a subject about another person, can we approach it not as a fixed body of facts to memorize and conquer, but as a gateway, inviting us into deeper layers we haven't yet perceived?
And when we encounter something genuinely confusing or mysterious, a complex relationship, a difficult global issue, a paradox in our own beliefs, can we resist the urge to slap on a simple label or demand a quick answer?
Can we instead lean into the unknown, explore its facets, its layers, comfortable with the ambiguity? How might that very embrace of uncertainty, as Yukiya suggests, actually open up unexpected insights, new possibilities for understanding, maybe even creativity, that demanding a fixed answer would shut down? Definitely. These aren't just abstract philosophical ideas for scholars to debate. Chapter 1 holds, I think, really profound wisdom that can fundamentally shift how we perceive ourselves, others, and the world around us. It offers practical ways to navigate the complexities of modern life.
We touched on this before with the power of labels. Those opening lines declaring the true essence is beyond names feel incredibly liberating when you apply them to personal growth, don't they?
Hugely liberating. We are constantly bombarded with categories, identities, our job title, our social media persona, our Myers-Briggs type, medical diagnoses, introvert, extrovert.
I'm not a creative person. I'm bad at relationships. I failed that test, so I'm a failure.
Exactly. These labels, these names we apply or accept, they are the things we can point to, define, often based on past actions or societal expectations. But Laozi invites us, constantly, to recognize that beneath all these fixed identities lies the name, the nameless state.
The state of pure, unbounded potential.
Yes. It existed before any label was ever applied, and crucially, it still exists right now, vibrant and dynamic, underneath the labels.
So genuine growth isn't necessarily about trading one label for a better one. I was a failure, now I'm a success. But maybe about reconnecting with that deeper pre-label potential.
That's a powerful way to frame it. From that space of potential, that wu space, you're encouraged to observe the subtle mystery. What's the mystery here? It's the unformed, vibrant essence of who you truly are, capable of unfolding in ways that your current named identity can't even conceive of.
Instead of just observing the manifestation, the fixed form, I am an introvert, therefore I act this way, you actively look for the underlying potential, the mystery waiting to emerge.
Think about it. If you strongly identify with a negative label, you tend to only see evidence that confirms it, right? You're observing the Jiao based on fixed ideas. Chapter 1 suggests consciously shifting your perspective back to that nameless potential operating from Kei or Dom, to allow the subtle truth, the miao, of your deeper capabilities and essence to reveal itself. It might surprise you.
That takes practice, I imagine. It applies just as powerfully to how we see others, too, especially in relationships. Parenting comes to mind immediately.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly easy for parents or anyone in a relationship to fall into labeling based on behavior. She's the messy one. He's so stubborn. You're always arguing. These are names applied to the manifest behavior, the you.
And those labels can become boxes, limiting how we see the person and maybe even how they see themselves. Self-fulfilling prophecies.
Exactly. But a parent or partner or friend, informed by Chapter 1's wisdom, tries to do both. They see the manifest behavior. You left your toys out again, the Jiao. But they also consciously look beyond it, striving to perceive the name, the unnameable, boundless life force, the potential, the complex mystery, miao, residing within that person.
So the focus shifts. It's not just managing the named behavior, the manifestation, but also nurturing the vast, unformed potential, the essence.
Right. It's not about ignoring the behavior, but understanding that the behavior is only one transient manifestation, one jiao of a much deeper, unnameable essence, the miao.
Okay, so this is inspiring, but how can we actively practice this shift? How do we move beyond the labels to observe this deeper essence and potential in a concrete way?
Well, one simple practical way to start integrating these concepts into daily life is an exercise we could call the nameless experience.
The nameless experience. Okay, intriguing. Tell us how it works.
You choose an ordinary, familiar activity, something you do regularly, maybe even automatically. It could be drinking your morning coffee or tea, listening to a piece of music you've heard countless times, taking a short walk you always take, or even something mundane like washing the dishes.
Got it. Familiarity is key.
Yes. Then, as you begin the activity, you consciously set an intention. For these few moments, you're going to drop all analysis, all judgment, and especially all the labels you normally associate with the activity.
So don't call the liquid coffee, don't call the sounds music, don't think I'm walking or I'm washing dishes.
Exactly. Try to suspend the naming function of the mind. Instead, just experience it directly.
How? Through the senses.
Primarily through the senses, yes. Engage fully. What are the raw sensations? The warmth of the cup, the texture of the liquid in your mouth, the specific subtle aromas without putting the label coffee on them. What are the pure vibrations of sound entering your ears? The tones, the rhythms, without naming the song, the artist, the genre. What's the feeling of the water on your hands, the smoothness of the plate, the air on your skin, the simple movement of your body without labeling the task or judging it?
Okay, I can see how that strips away the usual mental overlay. How does this connect directly back to Chapter 1's big ideas?
It's a direct application on multiple levels. First, you are immediately confronting, the limits of language that Zhang Jing highlighted. By intentionally setting aside the words, the labels, you're attempting to apprehend the experience before or beneath the linguistic cage. You're allowing reality to present itself more directly.
Okay, like that.
Second, you're cultivating a state very close to ko-iwa, or observing, depending on how you interpret those lines, by clearing your mind of the habitual desires. I wish this coffee tasted better. I hope this song cheers me up. And the fixed labels, washing dishes is boring. You create an inner quietude. It's a space more aligned with wu, or at least free from the interference of grasping desire and rigid concepts.
And that quiet, label-free state helps you.
It helps you observe the subtle mystery. This is where it gets fascinating. When you strip away the label coffee, you might suddenly notice intricate layers of bitterness or sweetness, a complexity you completely missed before because the label shut down further inquiry.
Or with the music, without labeling it, you might hear the actual texture of the cello's sound, or the silence between the notes, the subtle resonances you normally filter out.
Exactly. The profound, subtle mysteries start to reveal themselves not necessarily in grand, extraordinary events, but right there in the utterly ordinary. It echoes Han King's point that the Tao's whole essence is in every single thing. The potential for depth is everywhere.
You're embracing the cues, the unknown, and the subtle mystery that Yu talked about, even within the familiar. Removing the name opens the door to unexpected richness. It reveals a deeper, more mysterious reality underlying the surface appearance, the jiao.
And you can extend this practice, cautiously and respectfully, of course. Try observing a person you interact with regularly, a colleague, a family member. Just for a few moments, try to consciously set aside your usual labels and judgments. He's always grumpy, she talks too much. Can you just be present with their energy, their expression, the sound of their voice, observing the unnameable human being there beneath all the layers of your definitions?
That sounds challenging.
It is challenging, but it's a powerful way to practice moving beyond seeing only the limited, named state, you, and trying to apprehend something of the boundless potential, the wu, within them and within the interaction itself.
It's a simple practice on the surface, the nameless experience, but doing it consistently could really start to shift how we experience our everyday lives and maybe even how we relate to each other. #tag outro.
Wow, okay, so our deep dive into Chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching, it's really taken us on quite a journey. From the fundamental limits of language
to the cosmic dance of the nameless and named, wu and you, emerging from a single source. Through these different ways of seeing, observing the subtle mystery, miao, and the concrete manifestation, jiao.
And landing right in the heart of Swan, that profound, layered, ever-deepening mystery.
A mystery that Laozi tells us is not the end of the road, but the very beginning.
Exactly. He declares the ultimate Tao is beyond our final grasp, ineffable, always slipping free from fixed names and concepts. Yet this same mystery is the dynamic origin of everything.
And we explored how we can approach this reality not just with our analytical minds, but through cultivating these different modes of perception, finding stillness, observing without grasping, shifting perspective between the potential and the actual.
All pointing towards that engagement with Swan, a mystery not to be definitively solved, but to be continually explored, revealing deeper layers infinitely.
And this dynamic unfolding mystery isn't some wall blocking our path. It's the gateway to all wonders, all subtleties.
The process is the path. Engaging with the mystery, embracing the unknown, going deeper for the Baber, that's how we gain insight into the universe, and perhaps into ourselves.
Laozi really does leave us standing right there, doesn't he? At the threshold of infinite discovery. Xuanzi yu xuan, zong yazimen, mystery of mysteries, the gateway to all wonders.
It's a powerful place to pause.
It is. Our deep dive into Chapter 1 concludes here, but that invitation Laozi extends, the invitation to step through that gateway, well, that's ongoing for all of us. My hope for you, listening, is that you find moments this week, maybe through trying the nameless experience or just in quiet reflection, to engage with the world or even with yourself through that lens of mystery. Allow yourself to see beyond the names for a moment and discover some of the subtle wonders hidden right there in plain sight.
Beautiful intention.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As we sit with these ideas about the Tao, about names, about mystery, Chapter 2 is waiting just around the corner.
And it poses another fundamental question, one that flows directly from this discussion of naming and reality.
Right. What happens when the world recognizes beauty? Is ugliness somehow simultaneously born? What is the true nature of good and evil? And how does our very act of naming them shape our world and our experience?
That profound duality, the relativity of values, that's what we'll be exploring next time. We look forward to digging into that with you.
Until then.